Well, it is the best possible time to have Scott Wolter on because so much is happening with regard to the world of space. And he was right there, a part of that whole deal. And he says he's got some updates for us. So love to have you let us know what else you learned since last week with regard to the liftoff of Starship.
Yeah, it was a pretty busy week last week because I was on the road down there, but I had to fit in like 2 interviews. They talk about humanoid bots. One of them was an Self Robotics podcast with Marwa, with the CEO of Unitree, and Unitree just announced the 16K robot, and so it's a rather interesting interview. It's a long one, but we got into a lot of questions. And then also, Herbert and I had a chance to interview both the CEO and CTO of Agility and learn a bit more about the Digit bot. And it was, it's quite interesting. I asked kind of the questions of Melanie, the CTO. It's like she came from a world of autonomous robots or AGVs, basically wheeled bots, from Fetch Robotics, because she was a founder of that. I said, well, wait a minute, you're going from wheels to legs. Please explain that, because I get the question of why not wheels. And she was able to kind of give a pretty good explanation of why there are situations that you want to have it. So I wanted her to answer the question rather than me always answering. So you might want to do it, just listen to that. And there's also a discussion about hands in their point of view of what kind of hands you need. Do you need 5-fingered hands? Is it always appropriate to have a human hand? Should you have something else different? And she's coming more from an industrial robotics background where we're used to the idea of an end effector or a tool that you put on there, which is specifically designed for the bot. And so if you think about it with a human, if we pick up a drill, right?
Yep.
There's an interface between our arm and the drill, which is the hand.
Right.
And the hand is just there to act as a thing to attach it onto it.
Sure.
And in many cases, what they do in industrial robots is, wait a minute, we don't really need that gripper to grab the tool. Let's just bolt it right on there. So it does make sense in some applications. So it's worth listening to that. Okay. So I never like to take sides in these things. You can always have the arguments like, it's got to have hands, it can't have hands. It's like, you know what? It can work in all different situations, So all that matters at the end of the day, is it doing useful work? That's all I care about.
So in all of those situations, though, what we've talked about is that the human form is going to give you flexibility.
Yes.
You stick a drill on the end of one of the hands or one of the
it's stuck on there.
If that's stuck on there, now you no longer have the capability of using that hand to do something
else,
pick something else up,
unless you're able to easily detach it and put something else on. So it depends. So,
but then that becomes an entirely new level of complexity,
a new ecosystem of components. It's like I need a drill for my humanoid arm as opposed to I just need a drill that anyone can use and pick it up. So
moreover, the complexity of the way that it attaches or unattached.
You need to have an interface there for it. So if you want to have a humanoid bot come into your kitchen, you want it to use the appliances that are in your kitchen, not to say, we need a coffee maker or something, or coffee maker wouldn't be example, but let's say, a mixer or something like that. So I wanted to pick up the hand mixer and go over and go ahead and do that. And now I have something that's supposed to snap in there. So I have to go out and buy a second set of appliances for my humanoid bot. No. It's going to use what's there in that case. But that's when you're using the robot the way it should be, where it's a flexible piece of equipment that's constantly doing a different job. But when it becomes very dedicated, if you've got, for some reason, the humanoid bot is doing a particular operation that's much easier with the humanoid form factor, but it's only doing that and it's never doing anything else, then you might consider the kind of tooling you need to have with it so that you don't have more than you need and you don't have less than what you need, exactly what you need. And that's the way industrial robots work, is industrial robots, the same KUKA robot can do a multitude of different tasks within the factory.
Right.
The thing is, one individual version of that bot is only doing one task. It might be spot welding, it might be gluing, or it might be doing something else, because it's bolted on down there. The end of arm tooling is bolted there, and it's seeing the same thing coming through again and again and again. It doesn't get up and move over there and do a different task and different task and different task. It's not that way. So when you're talking about true flexibility, you're talking about the ability to be deployed wherever you want quickly. And the standard industrial robots cannot be deployed. They're really good at what they're doing, and they can do it really quickly with a lot of accuracy. And when you're talking about large volumes, that's what you want. But when you're talking about things where you have smaller volumes, like, making omelets in my kitchen, I'm not cranking them out in the hundreds of millions or even thousands or anything like that. It's like 1 or 2 a week at most. All right. So my bot has to be able to do that and do other stuff when it's not making omelets for me. Like, vacuuming and washing the windows and, doing whatever.
Right.
So it really depends upon what that space is, and that realizing there's a different, this is a type of soft automation we're talking about. It's going to be very, very flexible to be able to do those smaller tasks. So when you're talking about making, hundreds of millions of these things, you have a bottling line which is dedicated for that. And I don't know if you remember the movie, it was the remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Right.
And Charlie's dad is like working in the toothpaste factory or something like that. And his job is just to put the caps onto the tube of toothpaste, which is like silly. I mean, that would be doesn't bother. And he's being replaced by a robot, and there's like a robot, an industrial arm coming over. And it's like a little bit faster and putting. I'm just laughing because it's like, that's not exactly how it works, because if you're pumping them out, you're not using a robot, you're using a piece of equipment that's just doing it really quickly,
Exactly. Yes.
So
yeah, and again, that's where I get kind of confused by the idea of having these specified humanoid robots with specified attachments. Now, again, if you want to make it more complex and you can take it off and put different tools on the end instead of a hand.
Yeah.
I can see that, but it just adds complexity.
But
to have a robot that you would buy that comes with a drill on the end, it seems to me that in most cases you're better off to have purchased that automated tool rather than a humanoid.
Yes.
So there will same thing over and over and over again.
Right. And there's going to be third-party option companies to do that, because if you look at all the robot manufacturers, they don't build their own end-of-arm tooling. There's all these other companies that do it, that are specialists in spindles for milling or something like that, or making sealant guns, or welding guns, spot welding guns, grippers and stuff like that. And so there's these different ecosystems. So you could imagine that, and you could imagine maybe eventually there's going to be a standard interface for this, but it also depends upon the market you're focusing on. So agility seems to be pretty much focused in the manufacturing in commercial space, and not really thinking about going into the home. So it does make a lot more sense, depending upon how these bots are going to be deployed, that there's going to be a use case for that. And then there's going to be a use case where you're going to want to have kind of standard, and it may not be 5-fingered hands. It might just say 3 fingers is good enough. I can pick this bottle up with 3 fingers. I don't need the other 2 fingers for doing that. So that's fine. And we're seeing Boston Dynamics has gone that way. I think Unitree also did it with their bot. Right now, Agility has basically 4 fingers. They have basically like this. So they've kind of come up with, so there's going to be different forms that will be suited for different applications. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
but yeah, you can see that full interview that Herbert and I did. That's out there. That was really quite interesting.
Okay, and then the other
Peggy and Melanie.
Yeah, and you said the other one was with Figure.
No, with Unitree. With Unitree. So Unitree, you may know them, that they have like the H1 and the G1. The H1 is about 5'11", I think. They are selling them already. Several universities already have it, and that's the one that's the fastest walking of the humanoids, and is able to do a backflip. You remember?
Right.
And then they announced whatever kind of refers to like this Hobbit size bot that about 2 weeks ago that you can now purchase for $16,000. So they're very good at what they've done, the mechanics. I mean, they're still trying to work out and figure out, the teaching and everything else, and what the AI is going to be. And they talked about what their competitive strengths are, and what Tesla's and others are. So it's a very good interview with 𝐓𝐞𝐬𝐥𝐚 𝐎�, who is the CEO of Unitree. Very good and technical and understanding. And like one of the questions, I was like, "Hey, your bot's able to walk really fast. How come no one else's are? Because it seems like you're taking, and he's kind of like, we don't know why they can't walk fast either. He thinks it might be that, their choice of using rotary versus maybe some linear drives, but, even there are others that are using rotary that are not quite as fast. And so he's been able to demonstrate on first principles, yeah, you can make a humanoid bot that works at a reasonable, that can walk really quickly, quite well. And he says it just comes from, the experience of had years of building first their small robot dogs,
right,
and then going up from there and learning to do it. And they did everything. They had to design their own actuators. The same old story. They all looked around, oh, they're not here. And it was good getting a lot of insight from him on what's going on. And his English was okay, but every now and then there was some translation. in there, and we had a translator from University of San Diego that's working with him, that was able to help it understand.
You're just supposed to
And
use your translator on here.
yeah, and Marva did a good job of editing the whole thing. So she usually takes a couple of days to go through it for her soft robotics podcast. So yeah.
So of course, the big question that I've been asking, and it became even more important yesterday, is all about the language capabilities of whether it's the car or the two-legged robots, or even automated, basic automation like you've been dealing with for years and years and years, is that, bringing a voice to the table, bringing an ability to talk back and forth with your tools is a new concept, although we certainly saw it on My Mother the Car. Some of the robot movies over the years, we've seen it in fiction, but now we're entering the world of where fiction is becoming reality. And with the Worldwide Developers Conference and the discussion with Elon yesterday about Apple and AI and their deal, and the ability to just have a conversation with your phone, or a conversation with your bot, or a conversation with your car. This is extremely exciting to me. What are you hearing out there? Because we've only seen a couple of the humanoids that are able to do that, and none of the cars yet. Where are we on that transition? What's going to happen here?
Oh, I think it's going to happen. It's going to be critical. I see it being important to the car, just to get an idea of the car explaining to you what it's doing and why it's about to do something. So if it's going to be a robotaxi, you need to have that, because sometimes you ask the Uber driver, like, why are you doing this? Or they may be telling you, oh, something like this is coming up, just to make sure that you're prepared, as well as to finally get speech recognition that works right. I was having a fit with my car, just getting it to do my address book right, and just putting in simple names, and it never being able to get the name right. So I have a bunch of Grahams that are in there, and it goes back, and I see it like quickly spell it correctly, because there are a lot of different spellings of Graham as a name.
Yes.
And then it comes back as the gram, like in kilograms, and says, not an address book. I'm like, what do you mean? There's like 3 or 4 of them in there. Come on. And like, no matter how many times I'd say it again, and they're just other names. Like, I've had the problem that I can't even get Dan right sometimes. And I'll go Dan, and it goes like, no, Daniel. Nah, won't find that. Then I'll say something else and get like some weird connection to a name. It's like, wait, that's not in there. And so I'll say Dan, and it'll come back and show me Band or Van. I know someone by the name of Van, but it's like a really uncommon name compared to Dan. It's like, you're going to be kidding me. So I want one that I'd be able to say, and at least be able to spell it out or something like that if it's getting it wrong. So it's surprising how bad the speech recognition is in a lot of these cars. And I think having the AI will be great, because it's also really slow. I mean, you're sitting there waiting for it to parse what you say, only to discover that it got it wrong. And you do it again and again and again. So what's the point of the hands-free? It's like, I'm just going to go take the phone out, and find the number, if it's going to be that way. So I think it's going to be very important. And of course, with the humanoid bots, it's going to be critical for it to understand and explain to you what it's doing, because I think we want the confirmation that we explain to it what it's going to do, and it says, okay, I'm about to do this, expect me to do these steps, or please move out of the way, I'm coming over, or I have to grab something over here. And so if it tells you what it's doing every step of the way, that'd be good. And I certainly hope FSD would do the same thing, because you will see it when you're driving every now and then. It says, oh, moving into the passing lane, or coming out of the passing lane, something like that. That will come up there. But it'd be really nice if it would announce that, or give you the intention of what's going on, to have that dialogue. Or you could just say that to your incumbent, say, oh, could you please get over into the right lane a little bit sooner? There's an exit coming up, and I know it always backs up, and I'm seeing there's some cars coming close by me. Just get over now. Let's not wait till the half mile, because right now it always waits till it's a half mile before it gets over. It's like, sometimes you want to do it at 0.8 of a mile or something like that. It's like, just get on over.
And I'm looking forward to the time when it'll argue with you. So it'll say, well, I got plenty of time, relax.
Yeah, chill, dude. It's like, quit being a backseater, is a front seat driver, No more front seat drivers around here. Yeah.
So, but in terms of the people that you've had interviews with, or et cetera, or just the things you're reading so far, there hasn't been any new news with regard to
Yeah,
The
there hasn't been much. I mean,
kind
they're
of
trying
communication.
to solve a lot of other problems, but you know, the expectation is that you would have some sort of language interface for sure.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, yep.
Right.
That's the way to go. And
Uh,
they've all demonstrated to some extent. So I think that's going to happen.
So then, with regard to Starship,
Yeah,
we've heard a lot
yeah,
of we've heard a
yeah.
lot of
So do you know what this is?
well, you were picking up rocks last time I saw you on our
Yes.
show. You were picking up
Yep.
rocks and you were going to check them out. And so, have you confirmed now? Let us tell us.
Yes. I mean, there was like I said, there was a rock pile near us last time. I could go over and just grab rock. But these are ones we actually found over inside the beach area. So there's still a lot of them out there that you can find on your own, which I think is better than someone made a pile of rocks and you have to go
Right.
get them. And we saw also some large pieces, and I've got some pictures that I can share at some point to get an idea of what it was like, the excursion down there.
But anyway,
So
those rocks are. I mean, not everybody was here last week. So
yes, so this is from the famous rock tornado. In other words, this is a piece of the old pad from IFT-1 that, you know, completely disintegrated and went all over the place. And so, you know, you'd expect to find maybe small rocks like that, but there were rocks that were much bigger to like really big with rebar still in there and everything else, as well as some metallic pieces that were thrown around. So we were there the day before to get a really good close-up look at it, and we saw that there were two tiles that were missing. And then, you know, one of my sources said, "Don't worry, it's intentional." And sure enough, Elon Lin later on came in and said, "Yep, it's intentionally there to test out the heating that's around there." And they had some sensors because they wanted to know how high the heating really gets, whether it matches
oh,
the theory. And so we got to see the launch from the bay.
mhm.
Was out on a charter boat that was actually chartered by SpaceX. So there's like a lot of SpaceX employees that were
Oh
on there.
wow.
Yeah. And so unfortunately it was really cloudy or foggy, I should say. And I guess it wasn't technically a fog. Someone told me it actually was smoke coming from wildfires
Oh
from
wow.
across the border. So that's what was causing the haze that we couldn't see. And so, you know, we couldn't see the thing at all,
Oh
except
no.
at one point we could see a little bit of the plume. And I'll
Oh.
show you in there somewhere. You got a picture of it, and I refer to it as smoke on the water, fire in the sky. so, so but we could hear it. I mean, when it finally came, it was like you could definitely hear it and everything else. And then surprisingly, they opened the road up really quickly. So after I was there for IFT-1, but for the aborted attempt. So they had an attempt that they made down to 2 minutes. And it was late in the day that they opened it up and allowed you to get in there. Now, when IFT-1 went off, it was like a long time before they allowed anyone to get back in there because of what happened. In this case, so the launch is a little bit before 8 a.m. And I think before noontime, people were already down at the beach.
Oh.
I mean, it was just like, yeah, you had no idea that a rocket just went through
They
there.
just got up there.
Yeah. And so I get down there a little bit later in the afternoon. And I mean, first of all, there was absolutely nothing in it. Like the whole tank farm, everything was absolutely fine. You didn't see like debris or sand or anything else around there. And the next day I had a pretty thorough walk around that area and got some pictures that kind of show that. And there was like one difference that I can point out. So I'll try to go ahead and share this as we
You'll
know.
have to wait for me just a second
Yep.
here. Okay, go ahead. You're up.
Okay, so I'm
You
going to
can
go
do it.
ahead and share my screen, and then I'll probably do some weird stuff here. Are we sharing it?
Not yet, but that's
Not
okay.
yet, probably because I have to hit
But
share about 3.
if
There
it's,
we
if
go.
it's
All right.
coming, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a picture I took the day before.
Okay.
And you know what was kind of interesting about this is just looking at the placement of the panels back here behind the flaps, because
Yeah.
you know they were expecting some additional heating back there. But evidently right in that spot, not like the spot right in there, where you see a little bit in there, they decided, I guess we don't need it there.
Huh.
Yeah. So, um, and so there's another image of it. And they were doing a lot of venting already 24 hours before. So it's rather interesting to hear what was going on in the tank farm at that time. And so you can see how close it is, but you can also get a look at as you drive by it the following day to get an idea of what kind of condition it's in. And it looks like untouched again.
Right.
So yeah, you might remember we were kind of broadcasting from there by Starlink. The beach is down here. And here's the old tank farm. And you can see right now, the old tank farm is in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Though it's going to get ready to be removed.
Mhm.
And now that's a view from the beach, but beforehand, getting a couple, just some nice shots just to get an idea of what's going on there. And this is a friend of mine, Anna, that came on the trip with me. She is a rocket scientist herself and has designed, built, and tested liquid fuel rockets,
Wow.
and is getting ready to go into a PhD program to create nuclear propulsion.
Wow.
So yeah, so she's there just to kind of give you an idea. Whoops, the wrong way. To give you an idea of the size of one of these chunks. So that's, as
Okay.
you notice, it's the same thing. And so you find lots of these around there.
Huh.
And yeah, so you get an idea of scale. Again, the missing tiles there
Yeah.
that was able to get kind of from close up of that view. And okay, the next day, to try to bring some sort of luck, I wore my Mars Earth socks.
I
That was
see.
a Christmas gift, just to make sure everyone kind of knows. We had to get up early in the morning, right, left from Port Isabel on this boat. This is the Osprey. And here we are in position with the Starlink and everything set up. And somewhere over there is the tower. The visibility got a little bit better, but
I'm
still not
so
enough.
sorry.
So
I am
at some
so
point,
sorry.
I think it's actually over where this little bump is right there. Everyone says that's the reference you have. And of course there were Coast Guard boats out there to make sure you didn't wander further than you're
Sure.
supposed to. So
Sure.
yeah, so you're within a zone. So again, it's off over there. And then this is looking 180 degrees back towards South Padre Island. And that is not the tower, that is Margaritaville.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Right.
And then over here to that side is Lubbock Park, where most people would go to watch.
Got it.
Okay. So the advantage of taking this is that we were in Port Isabel. We didn't have to go over the bridge and come back over. So we were able to leave pretty quickly,
Yeah.
once the launch was over, and not be caught in the traffic. And that I ended up on Al Jazeera afterwards. Anyone who wants to look at that, they can. So, and so right over here is the entrance to Starbase. And behind there, you can see the sections of the tower that they're getting ready for the second tower, which, what the plan for that is not quite clear, because based on the new time frame, Elon wants to launch within a month. I don't think it's going to be a month. I think it's going to be closer to 2 months, just because he was off by a month last time.
I see.
Just using that. I'm thinking late July or early August.
Okay.
So that's the most likely thing. And he says that they want to try to catch it with the first tower.
Yeah.
So that pretty much seems like it, with the idea that they're going to come in over the ocean, and if everything's okay, it's going to kind of try to move into place. So the idea is that that's the intended target, and if everything's going all right, it'll start to move over, and if it needs to abort, it goes back over. So it's still going to have to move a bit, but that's the way the Falcon 9 landings happen anyways.
Right.
They are not actually going for the drone ship until almost the last second they make the move to get over there, once everything seems to be okay.
Right.
So this is just a view from the parking lot, which used to be a gravel parking lot a year ago, with no one parked there, and they're having to build an additional parking garage and go along with it. So that means there's a lot of new people there. There's also this new huge building which looks like Giga Texas, a scaled down version of Giga Texas there.
Interesting.
I think the same architect. It's so similar.
Yeah.
And a lot of the employees actually have Cybertrucks. So it's rather remarkable how many Cybertrucks you see around there in Brownsville. And so that's the view from there, of the tower, to get an idea where it is. And then, the rocket garden and the prototype for probably the HLS landing system that they're looking at, what the crew habitat's going to look like. And, just a couple more images there. And then, again, so the sections that are going to be going into the new tower, a little bit of a close-up of it. And that's what I was able to see.
Okay.
So like I say, smoke on the water, a fire in the sky. And that's kind of what we have there. Now, I think there is a couple other images there. Oh, so this is an image the next day going around there, and I thought, I found a tile.
Oh.
And no, it was like top of someone's thermos.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it was just styrofoam that was there. I'm not aware of any, someone claims to have found one like soon after, but it was broken, and it may have been like from the previous one. They just happened to, happened to find it. because my understanding is that less than half a dozen fell off at launch.
I see.
There was not a lot. So if he found it, he would have been very lucky to have been able to find that.
So we heard though, the news was that the very next launch, we'll have new tiles that are
Oh
twice,
yeah, strong. Yes,
twice
stronger.
as strong,
Twice
right?
the strength. Yeah. Now that means that the strength and the ability to stay on, not to
Right.
withstand temperature. It's still,
Right.
still going to have the same thermal properties, but
But
it'll
it'll-
probably be a little bit stronger as far as being able to survive the launch. So the fact that they didn't lose like was probably hundreds the last time, now just a handful is
Right.
pretty good.
Okay.
So now I did a live stream on X, which I just kind of jumped over earlier, where I kind of showed the walk around the property that you can take. And there are clearly these property signs out there to say, do not cross this. So you get an idea of the distance. So they own that property there, and that's potentially a place that they could scrub when they came down, or try to get over the dunes to go in the water. So it's depending what's going on, if it runs right around there, it's that SpaceX property that'll probably be okay. We'll see. It's just kind of a flat sandy plain. The reason I show this is that I posted this out and it said, I'm still standing. Yeah. So the launch did nothing to affect this sign.
I see. Yeah.
However, it did something to the tank farm. As you can see, it's very beat up. And if you look at the drone footage, you can see the shock waves going out and just like really hitting it right there.
Yeah.
And
Right.
again, they weren't filled with anything. It's
Right.
it's not a big deal. The things that we care about were fine. And even then, like this kind of little estuary floodplain area here, it's still fine. A little bit of dust may come up, but I think the deluge system really prevented a lot of that. Now, it doesn't mean that there weren't some shocks. So you have basically the property lines right along here, and over this side is also a protected wildlife area. So you're only able to walk like a thin corridor in here. And again, we start to see that beat up. We can see the current tank farm over here. We can see the deluge system here, and way back there is where the second launch tower is going in.
Okay.
Okay. And this is looking out over where you're not supposed to go because the birds are nesting there.
I
And
thought
I would say they
I
probably,
thought that was the surface of Mars.
yeah, almost looks that way. But so again, kind of looking back towards the beach. So we're not allowed to walk over here. And on the left side is the SpaceX property. So you have that thin corridor there because this is just like a wildlife bird habitat.
Sure.
And these dunes are just in front of where the beach is, where the water is. So you get a little bit of an idea of the distance to the water if they have to scrub. And again, a little kind of a close up of an idea of the construction site that's down here, which is going to be the second orbital launch mount.
Yeah.
Now, this here are some of what previous day was the no trespassing sign. So from about that vantage point, yeah, the shockwave was enough to cut that one down, knock this one over. So a few of them had, and this one here looks like it got restaked, it got broken off, and someone kind of put it back down there. So there used to be about 4 or 5 of them when you walked along there. There's really only one, so they have to go out and restake it. So now this here, that's a pretty big piece. It may look like a small. I probably should have put my foot in there as well.
Right.
That's like almost a meter across. Okay,
Yeah.
That's pretty big. You can see the rebar coming out of there and some pretty big chunks. That's something from the old launch pad that was thrown from the launch pad to the edge of the dunes.
Wow.
Yeah. And then on the other side of the dune, there's this, which I'm surprised no one's picked it up at this point. I should have just got out there and thrown the back of my Model Y and brought it home because it would be a nice collector's piece. But I'm pretty sure that that's not something someone just deposited there, because you do find like a lot of litter around there.
Yeah.
And people just throw stuff around there despite the fact that it's a protected wildlife area. And again, just the view of it empty now, from
Right.
Yep. And now I think, and then this was the picture from the previous day. You could see the tanks were not beat up.
Right.
So that's the difference from one day to the next. And and this one here, this is the one thing I wanted to talk about. You probably remember seeing this from the drone ship, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's the return. And as you can see, there was one engine that rutted right there.
Yeah.
And the theory on why it would have rutted is that starting these things up is pretty complicated. It's more complicated than starting up your ICE vehicle. It's not like a Tesla where you just flip a switch and let the electrons flow and everything goes. You've got to start pumping the the propellants through there, the hydrogen and the methane. You've got to spin up the turbines and everything, get the flow and all that, and do the ignition. There's a lot that has to go right, and all it has to go is one thing wrong. So the first thing you have to do is make sure when you feed the system, you're feeding it only with liquid, and you're not feeding it with any bubbles or anything like that. So if you get some big bubbles, or just areas that where you're lacking anything, then your turbines might overspin. You'll get like what they typically call cavitation, because it's running in a cavity, and things can break. So that's a bad thing. So you need to make sure that your pipes are full the whole way down. Now the problem is the tanks are getting empty at this point.
Yeah.
And you need two things to go right. You need to make sure the oxygen is flowing correctly. You need to make sure the methane is flowing correctly. So to make sure the oxygen is flowing correctly, inside the oxygen tank is a second oxygen tank. So if you observe the landing on the live stream, and some people were screaming, "Oh, it's not going to work. There's no oxygen. The oxygen level is zero." So yes, the main tank is zero, but there's this header tank, which is full of oxygen. And because it's full of oxygen, there's no voids in there. You don't have to worry about, the problem with ullage or putting bubbles in there. So it's no problem with that. However, they don't have a header tank for the methane.
Nothing.
And you would see that the methane levels were not at zero. They were up there. So basically, and what I'll do is I'll stop sharing right now, and we can sort of understand what's going on. That's okay. And we can go back to full screen, I think. Are we full screen again? Yeah, there we are. So I can kind of see what's going on. So basically, right now, this tank is, getting close to empty. All right. So I think we could be pessimists about this, because it's definitely not half full. It's like mostly empty. So you have that, and you have like a manifold down the bottom. So imagine each of these points here is where I have piping, which is going to go into where my engines are. And each one, so there's no central pipe. There's these different pipes here. And so each one of them is feeding off to a different area. Now, it was not coming down vertically. As you notice, it was actually coming down like this.
Right.
And you see, as soon as I do that, if I do it too much, I could potentially expose this manifold. And even if it's covered a little bit, if it like sucks in really quickly, it could adjust a little bit of gaseous methane as opposed to liquid methane at that point. And now when it's like coming down like that, everything is fine. But it was tilted about at this angle. And if you look at it, it was the engine that rutted was the one exactly there.
I got you.
So more than likely their angle was too steep.
Gotcha.
So now they because those buoys were there to take this, you see it came pretty close to hitting the spot. And according to Elon, it was precisely where they wanted to get. And it's because it was that precise where they wanted to get that IFT5 was why they decided to go.
I see.
My suspicion was they were going to probably try to do the catch at IFT5 a lot. And because they were so precise on this and they were able to do it, they went down there and they actually did a hover for a little bit. Yeah, they've got to go ahead and do it. Some people are saying, "Oh, no, it's like, that engine rutted. That's not a good thing." And it's like, doesn't matter. You've got the redundancy in there. Okay. The redundancy.
Yes.
And so that's why you have 13 engines in case one or two of them go out, the others are able to carry the load. And they did perfectly. They were able to adjust. They were able to come down there. It was able to do the hover. So to me, that was a better test than if everything worked without an engine out.
Precisely.
Because you proved it. You proved that, on paper, we know if one of the engines goes out, it's like, but now we just proved that the software was able to handle it. Now, what could have happened is that because they're trying to hit the spot, it's kind of flying on this way. That's part of the reason it's like that. They're trying to get it to slow down, but they're also trying to get it to move a little bit. They may have not done it quite enough with a boost back, or they're trying to get that control to hit the spot, which may have been that they were just a bit too horizontal. And they might, just try to figure out how to correct that now to make sure that they come in at an angle a bit more like that. Or either that, or maybe they had used up a bit more, the methane levels were not exactly as a particular. So there could be a variety of things. Usually, so this is why they have to have those huge margins. I think they still land with like about 20 tons, partly to make sure you have a little bit of extra, but also, say, whenever you cake, there's always batter left in the bowl, no matter how hard you try. So, in there, you always need fuel to make sure you have sufficient stuff in there. So unfortunately, that's what you have to do.
Well, if they make the claim that they're going to try to land it with the chopsticks, I might just have to come down to Texas.
Yeah.
That would just be,
You
that would
have to,
be
you have to.
too
Now,
absolutely amazing
yeah.
to see in
Now,
person.
now the last thing to say is it's a little bit hard to see behind me if I bring it up. It's like way too bright. Is that I'm back here in Michigan, and fortunately I brought my Starlink terminal with me as we saw on my trip there, because my local AT&T fiber has just been horrible. So I did a video yesterday. It was like dropping out like crazy, and then we tried to do the upload, and like after it's like 10% had already been uploaded after. It's like normally it's like the high 90s, like what's going on here? So that's it. I get my Starlink out there. That's what we're coming to you with. The same Starlink that brought you those beautiful images of the Starship coming in.
Yeah.
And the thing about the Starship, I mean, it showed how robust it is, that they somehow managed, even with all that fire and everything, that those flaps, the unflappable flaps, were actually flappable in the end, to be able to affect the landing and do the startup sequence. They were off the mark by 6 kilometers. Okay, cut them a break on that. Eventually, once they figure out how to come through, they'll hit their mark. And when they hit that mark, then you're going to know, oh, the next one. So okay, IFT-5, they're going to catch the booster. Let's say they catch the booster properly.
Right.
They're making modifications, with the stronger heat and also some ablative, and they may be changing a few things with the positioning of the flaps to be more leeward position, so it's not hitting quite so much heat. If they're able to bring that thing down on IFT-5, because remember, there's 2 things: we want to catch that booster,
right,
and then we want to have another reentry without it being so exciting, to have it come down without chunks flying off or anything like that. If they hit that mark, and if they catch the booster, then you could see IFT-6 being one where they might actually try to catch it. So it could be as soon as that, IFT-6, that they try to do it. It would be a little bit later if they're not hitting the marks out there, stuff like that, or things don't go. But if that goes right, they may be ready to do it, and they might be super ready to do it, because maybe by that point they have the second tower up there, so they'll have like a certain amount of redundancy, because they might be wondering. Of course, it depends if they could just do like one orbit and then try to land, or it's like, oh, okay, well, what we're going to do is that we're going to get the booster out of the way, make sure, do a couple orbits, now you can come down, and we'll try to do that catch at that point. Eventually they want to catch both with them in there, but at first you're like, nah, let's not screw around with it. Or they may have the second tower that they could use to catch that particular one in that particular case. It depends upon the configuration that they're going to have. So at that point, they might have enough redundancy that they'd be comfortable to take that risk. Now, the whole thing with the second tower, I know I got a little bit of pushback. Part of it is it wasn't just my speculation, but also, let's say, it was a bit informed from talking to other people around there, that they have cleared out the orbital mount, the suborbital mount, I should say. And as you see, the other sections are there, and they're getting very close to putting in there. And the question is, this is meant to be a full tower. It's probably a version 2 tower, so it may have some upgrades from the previous one. And the question is, do you need to like put all the deluge system, the tank farm, and everything else in there, or can you build the tower at first to be effectively a catch-only tower until you're ready to do the rest of it?
Oh, I see.
Because think about it, there's a lot of infrastructure that you have to get in there to make it launch.
Right.
And so a catch-only tower would be a lot easier at first, and then you keep on putting the upgrades in there if you do not want to take the risk of something going wrong with the first tower. Okay, so the idea is, like, if something happens to the first tower, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble there, because you won't be able to launch until you repair it, assuming that whatever damage is done is minor, because you don't know. I mean, really, everyone's saying that the damage that could be the worst is from launch. So long as the launches are good, if something goes wrong there, there's going to be some things that have to be fixed, but hopefully not. So that could add a certain amount of redundancy into the system if they wanted to do that. But it looks like, Elon is willing to take the risk. He's already said it's 50-50 that they're going to catch it. But what that might mean is they come down and they realize, oh, scrub it, and they put it right out in the beach, basically, and put it there. It's like, we didn't do it. Or, maybe something goes wrong there, but they might feel that they can contain it. So he's risky, but he's not reckless.
Right.
So they're going through the whole thing, and they're looking at everything that could potentially go wrong. The worst case is the thing comes down completely, is out of control. They can't do anything. The FTS isn't working. It comes right down on the tank farm and just screws everything up. That's like the absolute worst situation, which just means things were out of control at that point. But assuming they're able to still kind of control the thing, and if the thing is out of control, it's just going to probably land randomly somewhere, And the fact that it lands randomly in your tank farm is probably just that you were unlucky that day. So I'm thinking they feel that they have enough of these parameters under control
Right.
that even if things don't go perfect, it won't be catastrophic. So that's why they're willing to take the risk to catch it with the first one rather than delay. So they're not going to be so cautious that, oh, we got to wait 6 months. We got to really make sure we have the second tower. We really want to catch you with that. And the fact that he's saying like a 1 month timeline means like, okay, that's pretty much they're going. If they were thinking more like a 2 month one, it's possible they could have the second tower at a state that it could be redundant. But again, some think that you want the tower that's closest to the water to do the catch, not the one that's a little bit further away.
Yeah.
And I think for that one, they have to come in from the side anyway. You know, the way it's going to be mounted, the impression it's going to be rotated 90 degrees. Otherwise, you have to come over the other tower, and that might be kind of awkward too. So,
what would you speculate in terms of when they take a payload?
Okay, on that, I would think before they could do the payload. So the next one, they might attempt to do the Raptor startup, and the Raptor startup is important because that's what. So they're still probably going to do the same thing where they're going to make sure if things don't work, it just does a self-return.
Right.
So they'll test the Raptor startup, and if that's working, maybe they try to put themselves into an orbit at that point, or they just do it to deorbit a little bit quicker. So part of it is to make sure that's working. So they're going to need the Raptor to be able to do a proper deploy. Otherwise, those satellites are going to have to work really hard to get themselves up there. So the best thing is like get as much up there, and then they just use their delta V to kind of space them out and get into the parking orbit. So they you would need that to get into the orbit, and then you need the Raptors to start up again to deorbit itself, because the thrusters themselves would not be enough to bring it down.
Yeah.
And so it could be by IFT7 might be the earliest that they go for a payload. It could be, depending on how confident they are, that maybe they try something on 6. I don't think so. I think they want to really nail the landing again and then probably test that out. So by that point, you could see before the end of the year that they try to do it. Now, the question is whether they just deploy one thing, or if they're so confident, we're going to put that PEZ dispenser in there and we're going to load that thing up. We're not going to just put one Starlink. We're going to put them all out there. And that's a big decision, because that's an expensive payload at that point. But they'll look at it and make the decision of whether it's worth it. It's basically an actuarial kind of calculation that you're going through at that point. Is it worth the risk?
Right.
The benefit of getting these things up there, because these are going to be the second generation Starlink satellites.
Right.
And so they're having to go with this 1.5 version. They really want to scale it up, because the idea is that these things are big. They got like a really big antenna up there. That means that, this will be able to work.
Right.
Because they'll have that really big listening post up there. And it doesn't mean that one suddenly solves a problem. You still have to deploy lots and lots of them. But getting enough of them up there means they can really start going through and testing the system to see, is it working the way it's supposed to, the way we expect, to get an idea. And so from that iteration, so I get the feeling that, Elon is a bit impatient, and now he's decided we can start, putting the pedal to the metal at this point, and start going up. So, and it could be that even if they can't nail the landing yet, there's no reason why they couldn't start using it as an expendable upper stage.
Right.
They're doing that right now with the Falcon 9.
Yes.
And that they'll still do testing. So there's two ways they could go. One is that, they're still going to do the testing. They're going to do all the heat shielding, all that other stuff. And it's an expensive test vehicle that you keep on losing again and again as you do. But we're able to get the payloads up there until we're finally able to be confident with that.
Right.
The other is they could say, we need we need to probably do something totally different. It's going to take us a little while. So let's just knock out like the really cheap versions of this thing that be really, really expendable. And really, really expendable means no flaps, no heat shielding, probably only 3 Raptor engines. You don't need to have the 6 Raptor engine, unless the payload that you have is so much. So there may be ways that you could, just strip that thing down, because it's going to end up in the ocean, or it's just going to burn up anyways. But you can put these big, valuable Starlink satellites in there.
Exactly.
And so just more think of it as, expensive cowling, that's all, and just whoop, get it on up there. So they could take a semi expendable approach for a couple of months until they're really able to get that, if that's the case. So those are the potential avenues. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, hopefully they're able to nail it in that. I suspect, maybe they go through 5 or 6 reentries that is kind of expendable, but they're getting payload up there. And remember, the payload is also the data.
Right, of course.
So they'll look at it and say, okay, we're going to put real payload on there, real physical payload, but we're going to continue to get this data payload that we're looking at to figure out what it is we have to do different. But they get so much data that they already know what they have to do, and it kind of verifies what's going on. So I think they'll iterate it pretty quickly.
All right, Scott, thank you for all of that update and all of that, speculation about the future. And we want to occupy Mars as soon as we possibly can.
Yes.
For your t-shirt.
Yes.
So,
I had to put on something appropriate here. So
that's right.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. And so we'll see you next week for another update.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right.
You're welcome.
Out there. It's been.
Yep. And I'll be at the shareholder meeting. That's why this is actually a day early.
Yeah.
So I'll be reporting from there, and
shareholder meeting, and then Muskegon after that.
And Muskegon, yes.
All right.
And Muskegon right after that. So
Very
a lot of events coming up.
All right. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Same here.